record before I forget to do that. There we go.
Okay.
I did. I also do a Twilight Zone podcast, and I had two guests on for that. I think I got 5 minutes in. I was like doing the trivia, and I'm like, and I didn't hit the record.
Oh gosh.
And it was fortunately it's just 5 minutes, so there's just a bit of deja vu, and then we are good. I did. I'm looking at how many books behind you I have read. I haven't read that Picard one yet. Is that one out yet?
Well, no. The Strange New Worlds book it comes out in February.
Okay, because I actually did read I read 3/4 of the Kenobi book just this weekend. I didn't realize just how long it was.
Yeah, it's a long book. Well, then there's the Picard book over there. That's actually the longest novel I've ever written until I wrote the Strange New Worlds novel. So it's even longer. So
okay.
Well, they're doing the Star Trek novels. They're doing them in hardcover again, and so I'm like, well, let's give people their money's worth. So that's kind of how I feel like it.
Yeah, well, I mostly e-read now, so sometimes I get into a book and I've already done a few chapters before I have any idea how long it actually is.
Yeah.
So I think I read Kenobi. I read like the first 5 chapters, and I looked at it. It's like 12%. I'm like, oh my god! But I am enjoying it. I've got it mixed up with
most of my chapters are, I try to write them anymore so that if you're listening to an audiobook, you can get a chapter in 5 minutes. So I do 4 or 5 page chapters. So it's hopefully you could in my later work you could get through a lot of it a lot quicker.
Hello, Luke.
Morning.
I went solo. You didn't want to go Vader in the middle of summer?
No, I'm annoyed that I have to put on clothes at all for this.
We're having a pretty insane summer so far in Japan. So they're like, it's hottest now it's been since they started taking records in 1875. I just took out the garbage and it was like already like 85 degrees at 8:15 in the morning.
If you see flashes, it's because in Wisconsin we might be having some thunderstorms here. So that would be out the window over here. So we'll see.
We kept getting scheduled thunderstorms, and they never came.
Oh well, it looks like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, we could use a few just to break it up a bit.
Yep.
It's been a blast. Oh, one more question for you, John. Usually we do a plot summary, which for Star Wars seems completely pointless. So I'm just going to have someone read the title crawl. Would you like to read?
Yeah.
I can do it. Would you like to read the title crawl?
I'm looking to see if I have anything around here that's got it in it.
Oh, I have it on a shared screen already ready. So
okay.
You can read it off the computer if you'd like to. But if you'd like, I'll give you that option because it could be fun.
Oh, sure.
You can do your Rod Serling impression if you want, but that doesn't make sense for Star Wars.
Well, I think Brian De Palma helped write it.
Yeah, I think he told me to make it shorter, if I believe.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay, I guess we'll just jump on into it and see where it rolls then. So, Luke, you wanna do your year?
I'm gonna, for episode 150, I'm not gonna do a year.
Was that? Oh yeah, I thought you might not do a year. So let's just see where you go.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, now we have to work out a year. 35,642 BC. That's going to be my guess on that. Yeah. I mean, you can spit guess a number, right? It's not like there's anything to say I'm wrong.
2 billion BC.
Sure. Yours is not specific enough. Okay.
No, exactly 2 billion BC.
Oh, okay, got you. It's the anniversary. It's the 2 billionth anniversary of Star Wars. We're just now getting to this on the 150th episode of Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. This being Matt.
And Luke.
And I already said the name of the show, so I don't have to do that again. And you see, we haven't done this one because it's really fantasy more than sci-fi. No, honestly, this movie is, I guess, it's nothing for me. That sounds too bleak. I mean, it's in everyone's DNA. It doesn't even matter what genre it is, growing up, for my age, they showed it on TV once a year, and it was like a holiday. It was like, who knows? Maybe it was May the 4th. I don't remember, but I do remember it was like, oh, it's going to be on the ABC or whatever tonight, and all the boys at the elementary school would like plan their evenings around it. Anyway, we're doing this kind of not late in our show, but down in our show. So we got to have a Star Wars expert here. We definitely have a Star Wars expert. I came to him from reading his Star Trek books just to, I guess, tell you my own geek. Luke apparently had some run-in with the Mass Effect book, but he's written many books, including that's 50 issues of the Knights of the Old Republic comic book, I believe. It's John Jackson Miller. Hello.
Hey, glad to be here. And it looks like we have John, Matt, we have a John, a Matthew, and a Luke. So we just need a Mark, and we'll complete the whole the Gospels right there.
We do have a regular guest who's a Mark, so we're pretty close.
There we go.
I did consider inviting him just because of that, but I thought 4 people might be a bit too much. So that's
all good.
Well, so fun story about that. My grandmother believes that I'm named Luke from the Bible, but my mum is like, no, you're not from the Bible. You're literally named after Star Wars.
Yeah. The first time somebody told me they had named their child after one of my characters from Knights of the Old Republic, I'm like, really? That's going to be the story you're going to go with. I'm honored by it, but this kid is going to be having to spell his name strange for a long time. So anyway, it was flattering.
In my grade at school, there was like 5 Lukes, so I think a lot of people in my parents' generation did the same thing.
There you go.
Yeah, I definitely felt weird writing my film notes last night. I'm like, wait a minute, am I referring to the character, or am I making a note to Luke? I'm not quite sure. It's definitely hard to remember. Well, for some of us, it's hard to remember where we first saw Star Wars. I guess if you were there in '77, you probably remember, but for me, I think I saw them backwards. I think Return of the Jedi is the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater, and then I think I saw Empire after that, and then finally when they started showing the original on television every year is when I actually saw it. So, but I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, so the fact that the plot was going in the wrong order didn't bug me too much because they had lightsabers. Luke, any memories?
So obviously I grew up with a family who are big into Star Wars, but my first memory of seeing them was seeing the special editions when they came out in theaters. It's very likely I'd seen it on tape before that, but that's the first time I remember watching them. And then everyone was obsessed at my school then.
I do have a good special edition story. We had a class trip to like Gatlinburg, Tennessee or something, and I just got my driver's license and somehow managed to convince 3 girls to go see the special edition with me. So I must have looked like I never dated any of them. But hey, if for anyone watching, it looked pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a theater in Gatlinburg. That's
actually okay. If you know the area, I think we technically had to drive out to Pigeon Forge or something.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I went to UT Knoxville, so we saw a good deal of Gatlinburg.
Okay, it's you called me on my broad brush. It's like how we had a typhoon a year ago, and first I was like, oh, a peach of sagebrush came by the car, and a month later, it's like an entire tree came by the car, floating by the car.
I was honestly wondering because I'm scheduled to do a show in Knoxville later this year, and we're talking about going up to Gatlinburg, and it's like, well, there's going to be like movie theater there, right? And it's like, no, I don't remember what. So now we know where we'll go. We're going to go to Pigeon Forge.
Yeah,
so,
I'm dating that 1997, so who knows what it's like there now.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, I just have a feeling there are probably more Ferris wheels and more roller coasters. I imagine.
I should hope so.
Oh, that's all it is. It's one big amusement park.
I think they call it Redneck Disneyland, but yeah, sorry.
I don't want to go there. Although for years when you were driving to Pigeon Forge, there were signs on the highway saying that you could see Buford T. Pusser's death car. He was the police officer from Walking Tall, and so the I guess it was the Ripley's Museum or one of the Autos museums there had his vehicle that had been all shot up there. It was horrible. Anyway, I'm sorry, none of this has anything to do with Star Wars, but it does have to do with Tennessee, and that's where I saw Star Wars to begin with because I grew up in Memphis at the other end of the state, and I did see it in '77. I did not see it as soon as everybody else did because that was back in the day that they didn't have multiplexes. Movies would not actually open everywhere in the same weekend. The movie did not open in Memphis that weekend at all, in fact. And then when it did open, it was in exclusive engagements in a couple of theaters. It ended up going to where I saw it, a theater called the Whitehaven Twin. Special thing about that is it's about 2 blocks from Graceland, where Elvis Presley lived. And Elvis used to have them screen movies for him after midnight for him and his friends. And so it's widely believed that Elvis did see Star Wars in that theater, just not the day that I saw it. It would have been one of the last things he saw there, probably. But yeah, I saw it. I saw it then. It was very difficult to get into. My novel Kenobi is actually dedicated to my sister. It says, for making sure her kid brother got in to see the movie. And this is because every time we went, we would have to go see whatever was showing in the other room. Because it was you couldn't get into Star Wars because of all the lines and everything. So yeah, for years I was just like not really happy with the movies that I saw instead. So I've Pete's Dragon, Helen Reddy. I'm sorry, no, I don't need to see that.
No, my theater flipping. I needed your sister when I was about 14 because when Army of Darkness came out, we went to see it when we were underage and got tickets for Homeward Bound, and then got kicked out of the theater and had to watch Homeward Bound too. So, oh wow.
Yeah, it's those little things that you're upset about years later, and that theater I'll never forget. It was like it had been built in the 60s as one of these big grand halls where there's a gigantic screen. And then they decided in the mid 70s that they were going to split it into long ways. So you end up with just a small little screen and a hall that's like 10 times longer than it is wide. And so, yeah, wherever I sat in it, I do remember this is when I knew I needed glasses because it is like being in a tunnel. But I did see it and, started buying the comic books, the novels. Empire Strikes Back is kind of the high watermark of my, kid fandom for it. And then of course I end up migrating into Star Trek and other, comics fandoms and gaming fandoms and things. And I don't really begin working with Star Wars professionally until the 2000s, when I start doing, as you mentioned, the comics. And the comics leads to novels, and the novels, lead back into all sorts of other things. So but there's a lot of stuff in there. And of course, getting into Star Wars itself in 1977, I can. There's a lot I can say about, what movie culture and what science fiction culture was like at that time, and what Star Wars did to it. But I'll let you ask the questions.
No problem. Well, like I was saying, we usually do a plot summary, and it's
Sure.
midnight last night, and I was sitting there like, nobody needs to write a plot summary for Star Wars. So I'm going to take a page from my Twilight Zone podcast. And John, if I could ask you to just give the prologue a bit of a read here.
Okay, let's see here. Well, this should be in 3 paragraphs instead of 2 because I'm all out of sorts over that. Well, that's kind of the rule is it was actually Brian De Palma who talked George Lucas into reducing this trailer or the opening crawl from 6 paragraphs to 3. And then every time we ever did an opening in the beginning of the comic books, it was always exactly 3 paragraphs. and so I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, where's the 3rd paragraph? And I realize, oh, it's all here in one. It is a period of civil war. Rebel spaceships striking from a hidden base have won their first victory against the evil Galactic Empire. During the battle, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, a space station with enough power to destroy an entire planet. Pursued by the Empire's sinister agents, Princess Leia races home aboard her starship, custodian of the stolen plans that can save her people and restore freedom to the galaxy. Yeah, like I was saying, that format we used in just about everything we did as a tie-in after that, that referred to any kind of an opening prologue, and without fail, every paragraph has one capitalized phrase in it, and it's sort of either it's the Death Star or the Galactic Empire or whatever, or the Force. It's just kind of there to be that Saturday morning serial sort of setup And again, that's another thing about Star Wars when it comes out, is it's episode 4, but not until the re-release. The original episode 4 is just plain Star Wars. And so anybody who walked into it afterward and saw episode 4 didn't know what was going on for a good while.
I'm old school. I couldn't help but label my notes "Adventures of Luke Starkiller" is taken from the Journal of the Wills Saga 1, The Star Wars.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I've just realized that, ironically, for our plot synopsis, we've read out the plot of Rogue One.
Yes.
Well, yeah, we spoiled Rogue One, haven't we? That's a shame. But yeah, it is again, seeing that opening, there's a website which is just devoted to opening titles, and the what they go through to actually make the titles, and the ones that stick with people, and the ones that are just really designed to just shock the entire audience into, we're no longer out in the lobby eating popcorn. We're in a different place. Something big is going to happen. And again, that's what you get in Star Wars, where you've got the crawl. You've got the crawl going in a direction that people have never seen before, which is into the screen. It's luring you, the reader, into the reader, but the viewer, into the actual action. And then the first thing we've got is the Star Destroyer, which shows up, and particularly if you were in a screen that was even wider than the one we had, because ours wasn't that wide, it fills the view. And again, this is just not the sort of thing that we were used to seeing back then.
Well, go ahead, Luke.
I was just thinking, because the last podcast me and Matt recorded was Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this film is not that long after all the space race moon landing stuff.
No, it isn't. And yeah.
In that period, I guess all the films wanted to look like that, right? It's spacesuits, it's rocket ships. And this is the film that came back and said, sci-fi can be different.
Well, there's a couple of things there. First of all is, the big standard that everybody went by was 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Right. Yeah.
And that's even before they've really got visuals of what Jupiter should look like, or various things. So you've got a lot of stuff that is it's still all going to be practical effects for a very long time after this. So I mean, you're looking at model making. You're looking at models that when you see explosions, they're actually blowing them up. That's not really the kind of stuff that they which is one reason why they had an auction for one of the surviving X-Wings here this last week, and it went for so much money because there's no not that many of them left, because they blew them up. And again, that's just a big thing that is different. You do see in movies that had come before that, you'll see spaceships, some decent model work in them. There's Silent Running with that's the Bruce Dern movie where they're trying to rescue or he's trying to steal all the forests that have been saved from Earth. Nice models that they've got there. But again, even so, nothing on this scale, and nothing where it really integrates the sort of combat dogfight sequence kind of stuff that you had in World War II. He just really kind of took it to a different level. And one of the cool things that when I did go visit Lucasfilm for the first time, it was when I was writing the graphic novel for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. One of the things that they've got at Lucasfilm is this big room that's sort of temperature controlled, and in it, they've got the machine that did the compositing for all of the photo work for all of those model scenes for that and a bunch of different movies. And
Cool.
and yeah, I mean, so I mean, it looked different from everything that had come before, and then there's just a major thematic difference from what has come before. I am by no means the first person to observe this, but some people say that the 80s started the 1980s started on May 25th, 1977, and that was the end of the 1970s, more or less, in terms of the 1960s had been this era of promise. The 1970s had been sort of this era of disappointment and disillusionment. And it's really felt in all the science fiction movies that you see in that time. What's the last big science fiction movie that you get before Star Wars? It's Logan's Run, where everybody dies at 30. And before that, we mentioned Silent Running. We mentioned all these other films, post-apocalyptic things. Planet of the Apes comes from the 60s, but obviously that feeds through those later films. They're extremely depressing movies. I love them, but they're extremely depressing movies. And you get Omega Man and Soylent Green and Rollerball, and basically all these movies which are the future is going to be horrible. The future is going to be horrible. It's going to be a nightmare. And here comes Star Wars, and right away it's bright and flashy. And we talk about the models. Another big thing was that a major thing that got you pulled into this movie and the world was that it looked lived in. Everything wasn't brand spanking new. Everything wasn't spotless off of the showroom floor. If you watch 2001, everything is spotless, and you could probably say there's a story reason for that, because you don't want things floating around in your spaceship when it's in zero G. But even so, everything just looks absolutely brand new. And where do we start in this movie? We start at the farthest place from the center of the galaxy. He even says it. If there's a bright center to the universe, you're on the planet where it's farthest from. And so again, this brings you further and further into this world, and it leaves you wanting more at the end. And you kind of got it.
Something this film, like specifically this film, is so good at is implying so much more outside of it.
Oh yeah.
Like you go to the cantina, you see all these aliens, you think there must be so many worlds in this galaxy.
And they don't explain anything.
No.
They don't explain anything. They don't waste their time doing what is very much a pulp fiction, pulp science fiction trope of, again, you watch the old classics even, and they'll have to explain, well, of course, this device does this, and this, and it sets you up for when it does it.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, Luke just, fiddles with R2's restraining bolt. Nobody tells us what a restraining bolt does. We just get it.
Yeah.
And Han Solo's got to punch the coordinates into the Navicomputer. We don't know what coordinates he's punching in. He doesn't know what coordinates he's punching in. We don't know why these things work. We don't know why on a lot of this stuff. But we accept it because the characters accept it, and they're matter of fact about it. When they are actually surprised by something, then that conveys to the audience, okay, this is out of the ordinary for this world. That's no moon. That conveys to us that, Han, Luke, Obi-Wan, they've never seen anything like the Death Star. And this is something that is so bad that there is no, technological solution for it, that they can just go and, buy at the hardware store.
Right.
I watched the most recent Blu-ray edition, whatever that is, with my family about a month ago. So for this podcast, I was like, oh, I need to track down the despecialized one, right? So I actually did watch that last night, and I see where Lucas is like, oh, I want to fix these effects and really make them look like I wanted them to. At the same time, like you're saying, it's like the original effects actually add to the lived-in feel, because when you do see that World War II dogfight footage, it is scrappy looking. I was really enjoying that just last night. I mean, I don't have any particular problem with the special edition.
No,
but I
it,
just
you know,
like-
there's scenes there where you can kind of see ghosts of where the composites didn't exactly work perfectly, and I could see cleaning that up. And yeah, I'm particularly fond of the whole story behind Jabba the Hutt in the first movie or in Star Wars, and what ended up happening to him, because of course, Jabba is in the script. They shot it. They shot dialogue. They shot a scene with a stand-in when Howard Chaykin was drawing the comic book, and I actually read the comic book before I got in to see the movie. And that's how long it took. Well, the comic book launched in March, so the third issue was out when the movie came out. And in that, I think it's in the second issue, I think, is that scene with Han Solo and what we've lovingly referred to lately as in recent years as Monkey Jabba. Basically, he's a Nimbanel. He's Howard based it on a one of the characters from the Cantina that they had sent photos of. And he's sort of a monkey with kind of mandrill, whiskers. Yeah, you got it. And he had a speaking role, and he turns up in the next 3 years of comics.
Oh wow!
And so all the way up to when just in the issue before when Empire Strikes Back was supposed to be adapted, Monkey Jabba puts the bounty back on Han Solo's head in order to actually tie it all up properly. But what happened in the interim is the folks at West End, and I think it was Pablo Hidalgo that came up with the idea, he made that character a character. Whoever it was made that character a character called Mosep Benid. He is Jabba's accountant, and he goes around posing as Jabba when Jabba cannot do anything. So or doesn't want to get out there because Jabba doesn't want to get his hands dirty. And so that character is in the Kenobi novel.
Nice.
And that character is also in the Canto Bight book that we did. I was able to canonize him in the new Disney era with that character appearing there, and yeah, he basically he survived whatever happened in Return of the Jedi, and a good accountant can always find work.
Yeah, he just got got choked for a bit. He's got a few scars. He's doing good.
Yeah, there you go.
So you were talking about the things the film doesn't show and how it draws you in. Something I really appreciate in this film is the amount of work Alec Guinness does.
Oh yeah.
But he sells you all this backstory of the Clone War and the Jedi Knights with just a couple of lines and some facial expressions. And I can see that's why people were clamoring for that prequel trilogy, because he made you really believe it.
Well, that stuff is on the page to begin with, so you have something there. But then he gives it some gravitas. A young student named Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father, and the Clone Wars. There's no discussion of what the Clone Wars are. It's just we don't know whether there's a really written backstory for it or not. It's just there. It's window dressing that could be filled in later, or maybe it wasn't. We didn't know. We were hungry for anything, and that is really, you get into the next 6 years. That is a period where the merchandising just goes crazy, and again, that's the other smart thing with Star Wars is that George Lucas saw what had happened with some other franchises, and asked for a piece of the action and said, let me control the merchandising, not ask for it, but that was what he negotiated, that he would handle it. And so yeah, I mean, and again, there's a whole podcast to be done just on that too, but
I'm sure it's out there.
Oh yeah, and I probably done them as well, but it really, this notion of having a show or movie or radio show even live on in between the episodes in comic books or in a newspaper strip or in novels. It's nothing new at all. There were novels for the Lone Ranger that were written by the guy that created the Lone Ranger. But the idea that there would be any kind of quality control on this stuff is not really in the picture until you get to really Charles Schultz with Peanuts. He owned the merchandising, had the thumbs up or thumbs down on just about anything. So you couldn't have Snoopy brand vodka. It would be whatever he wanted. And then Gene Roddenberry had in Star Trek, basically had to try to step in several times to make sure that the stuff that was coming out for Star Trek was reflective of the show. And added to it and didn't just profit from it. Well, Lucas does this in a serious way, and so yeah, I mean, having all those blanks. I guess on Wikipedia they have what they call stubs, where it's branches of a tree that can be filled out later when an article is written. We got a movie here with just lots and lots of these stubs that could you could actually build things off of. And boy, did we.
Yeah. Two thoughts. One, I was sitting here thinking, we're in Japan. I'm like, I wonder if you can get Snoopy vodka. You can definitely.
I don't know.
There's definitely some with Hello Kitty on it. So, yeah, it's weird sometimes.
But it wouldn't be officially licensed.
That is true. Yeah, the other one I was just thinking, when I was a kid, I was quite enamored by a bit of ephemera, which was just a storybook with some nicely painted pages about Luke at the Republic's or what the rebellion's flight school, basically. And I'm sure if I read it now, it'd be like so out of whack with canon. But when I was 3-4 years old, I couldn't watch Star Wars every day because VHS wasn't quite in the house yet. That was the Star Wars I obsessed on most. So for a year or two.
Yeah.
I was thinking with the credits as well. We don't have them, right? But in 1977, would it be starring Alec Guinness, blah 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 blah, with Peter Cushing? Yeah. I mean, that would have to be the credits.
Well, Lucas got in trouble with the DGA, the Directors Guild, for not putting his name at the front of the movie, and I can't remember what happened with it, whether he was suspended or not. But basically, it was a case where he said, no, this is what we're trying to do here is get people into this this world, and all that stuff can be at the end. And of course that goes against decades and decades and decades of producers and directors and screenwriters and their agents making sure that they were at the front of the movie and where they were in the front of the movie. But it could be a good while before a movie starts. And I think now, particularly watching, you mentioned Star Trek, watching some of the first 6 Star Trek movies, it's still a little jarring today to see how long you have to wait before the action starts.
Yeah.
And you realize, that was the way of it for a long time.
Yeah, I had been screening my family sci-fi films, and they loved the Kelvin verse. And then when I put on, okay, let's do Wrath of Khan, and my daughter kind of tuned out relatively quickly.
Yeah,
but Kelvin verse into it.
Much different time, much different pace.
But that is just, I will not dwell on Trek too much, but that's where Strange New World, I'm like really looking forward to a Blu-ray, because I'm like, oh, this gets it, and it's flashy for the modern viewer. So that's really nice. Star Wars.
I feel we've gone too far the other way now, where a lot of films just don't even bother giving you an opening title and a theme tune. And I miss having a little song.
Yeah, I think Nightmare Alley had like nothing at all. Dude, you just watch the entire movie and like, wait, did this movie ever start? We'll talk about our green actors, because Harrison Ford, I guess he was still unknown doing this. He'd just been in a No, Apocalypse Now is after. He hadn't even had his little bit part in there yet. So
No, he'd been in American Graffiti.
yes,
and that was big. I can't remember whether I know he's in Force 10 from Navarone, and I think that might have come afterward. But basically, yeah, he had been a working actor. Also worked as a carpenter and various other things. Spent a very brief amount of time at Ripon College here in Wisconsin, where I live now. Enough that they claim him, even though he was only here, I think, a year. And so, yeah, Mark Hamill had come from television. He had been on a TV show with Jack Elam called The Texas Wheelers, which is a well-loved Western show that only lasted one season. He's actually, and again, I don't remember the order of these things. I think this might have been just either right before or right after. He's in the Grant Goodeve role in Eight is Enough. So Mark Hamill plays the oldest son in Eight is Enough, just in the pilot. And so that's still out there. And of course, Carrie Fisher, she had been in Shampoo, and she was Hollywood royalty by this point because of who her parents were. But otherwise, yeah, Alec Guinness, Peter Cushing, those are the big established names. And it's interesting that he went that way, but in a sense, it also allowed him to put most of his money on the screen.
But
yeah, I felt, is this the start of that? Because I think that's quite common these days, is if your film is like a spectacle movie, maybe you do put an unknown in the leading role.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the studios and the financing.
Of course.
They want somebody or something bankable. And so I mean, I'm sure that it was helpful to be able to mention Alec Guinness. I'm sure it was helpful to be able to mention some of these folks. But again, this movie was not a guarantee for anybody. It was not one of those movies that had kind of there have been movies where the buzz is negative leading up to them. People don't remember that Titanic had the stink of death on it right before it came out. That people were talking about going to be another Waterworld. And again, Waterworld was another movie where, or like Heaven's Gate in 1980, where, the press never talked about the movie. They just talked about the making of the movie. They talked about how it was going to be a disaster and will it be a disaster? And is it going to be a disaster? You didn't have that really to the same degree with Star Wars, but certainly, the novel Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster, who also is the ghostwriter of the original Star Wars adaptation novel, that was written as basically a possible TV movie sequel in case they had to bail, in case they had to do something where they could shoot it in the forest, no sets would be necessary. Han Solo is not even there. It could be as simple as possible, and that kind of comes across in the book, that it is very much almost like a bottle episode, to use a Star Trek phrase. It's very much a self-contained story that is only on one planet, and you can see them doing it relatively cheaply. And as it turns out, no, they didn't need to go that way at all, which that's good fortune for everybody.
Thank God we got the holiday special instead.
Well, and again,
I love the holiday special.
But that again is an example of why it's important for the studio to have control of things, and for the filmmaker to have control of things, in a sense, such that things are not going on or being created without oversight that don't exactly reflect the brand. This is that was still very early in the process, or very early in this franchise. And there are moments like that in the comics too, because we got a 7 foot tall rabbit in the first first batch of comics that were original comics for Star Wars. And Lucas was not thrilled with that, and so that went away. Although that character came back, actually he came back in a comic book I wrote. I didn't write the story that he was in, but I wrote the issue in which he returned. So,
well, you're talking about people not being convinced this film was going to succeed. A lot of those actors we listed off 5 minutes ago didn't seem very convinced by this film until it came out. Like there's the famous story of Han Solo, that's not his real name, Harrison Ford. Then what's the line? You can write this shit, George, but you sure can't say it.
Well, and if you look at the films that they book after Star Wars, it's very, it's kind of plain that this is not a movie that at least their agents thought would change their careers forever. Because you still have a couple of years left where it's not, Han Solo doesn't go from this directly to a Raiders of the Lost Ark starring vehicle.
Right. You just called him Han Solo too.
That's a right.
That's you in the shirt there. That's you in the vest. That's
fine. That's who he is. He's Han Solo.
Harrison Ford. Yeah, Han Solo, Harrison Ford. All the letters of Han Solo are in Harrison Ford, I believe. So, is that correct?
No L.
I was just going to
no L.
In Japan, you can get away with it. Han Solo.
Well, I can tell you that if you anagram Alec Guinness, you get genuine class.
Nice.
Okay, that works for me. Because
that's not mine. I got that from Jimmy Stewart. He said it on the Tonight Show back then.
Yeah, but someone else must have written that beforehand. It did take quite a while for Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill to kind of become like legit stars, because all through the 80s it was like, oh, they were in Star Wars. And Carrie Fisher mostly was doing it more behind the camera, I guess, and Mark Hamill got into the voice work where they really seemed to gain traction. It's like, no, these people actually have and had like notable careers. Like Mark Hamill, you say the Joker right after you say Luke Skywalker now. So, and then Last Jedi, you get both at the same time. It's great.
Like it's the case of that curse where maybe this role was too big, because he's always going to be Luke Skywalker when people see him now.
Well, it's one of those things. And obviously Carrie Fisher did an entire book about it and a stage show about it. It's something where people, I think, and it's true whether they're in Hollywood or in sports or something else. It's possible to have one thing on your resume that is just so big that it's you either learn to live with it or play off of it somehow. And so and writers and people in comics deal with the same thing as well. So it's
for sure. And we haven't even mentioned Anthony Daniels yet. I guess you it's like, well, because he's in a suit the whole time, but obviously he's integral to the entire series, really, because he keeps showing up.
Well, I remember hearing from people in the UK, we often have these TV shows where I remember the 80s, I remember the 70s, I remember Star Wars, just a bunch of talking heads filling you with nostalgia. But the line I remember hearing was that when the film was coming out and people were looking at the posters and getting excited, they didn't care about Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and all of this. It's, I want to see the film with the golden robot and the space monkey.
Yeah, you get a lot of guest appearances by them. They show up at the Academy Awards. They show up in all sorts of places. It's pretty clear that they and not Darth Vader are sort of the stars that the kids wanted to see at the time. And I think the first three action figures I got as a kid were the droids and Darth Vader. So I was having to invent stories with just them for a long time.
That's the fight we all want to see: C-3PO versus Darth Vader.
Well, it required C-3PO to fly the X-wing I had, which was not easy. And again, the very early molds, at least the one that I got for C-3PO, was not good. So his leg was actually frozen in place. and my dad took it onto his tool bench and had to break it. And then he put a pin in 3PO's leg. And to this day, 3PO has a leg that can swing around like a rocket. He can do these high kicks.
Special kick in action.
Yeah, but but at least that was out and available, and by Christmas there was something for kids to have.
My toy dump for Star Wars came with Return, and I'm sitting here thinking, we mail ordered an Anakin Skywalker, like it's an old Anakin, like at the end of like Force Ghost at the end of Return Anakin from 1983. I'm like, yeah, by that time the toys had gotten so like wildly specific, and you'd go into, it wasn't Target at the time, Richway at the time, and it would just be like, shelves upon shelves of Lobot because everything else had been bought.
Well, yeah, I did I don't know if I can actually, I can't get to it on my shelf here, but the first Star Wars publication I ever did was unlicensed. It was a collectibles magazine in 1999, and so we had this entire book full of all the Star Wars action figures and trading cards and everything else. And the editorial cartoon that we had at the front was saying that they needed new movies quickly because they were running out of things to do toys on, and the cartoonist had drawn action figures for Sound Man with Boom, a fan magazine editor with editing pencil, and just all the extra number 5, Stormtrooper number 7. I mean, what I envied the kids that actually would buy multiple Stormtroopers, because you'd only get the one usually because it didn't make sense to have more than one, and then you're trying to make up the stories mentally and you realize there's just one Stormtrooper.
The trick was I bought a couple Stormtroopers, and my friend Aaron bought a couple Stormtroopers, and my friend Tom bought a couple Stormtroopers.
There you go.
And then when we played together, we had a little squadron.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe this is why I eventually ended up gravitating to the Transformer toys more, because you only need one Optimus. Well, Luke needs more than one, but technically.
Well, if everybody's unique, you don't have a problem. But I mean, if you're trying to play toy soldiers, you got to have the soldiers. And so I ended up having to make up stories. My earliest Star Wars stories were not obviously for comics or books, but were the ones I made up with the action figures. And I had to basically decide that all the bounty hunters were bad guys, and there were factions here, and it's funny that I let that impact what I did later. I have a book back here. You mentioned Knights of the Old Republic. All the Knights of the Old Republic comics are in one giant omnibus now. It's 7.5 pounds, 1,350 pages. But it's about this Jedi Zane Carrick, this kid who's very inexperienced and not very good at things. I gave him a yellow lightsaber, and I gave him a yellow lightsaber because that was what I thought Luke had for the longest time, because the action figure had a yellow lightsaber. And there's another character in that series named Slisk, who is a Trandoshan, which is the species that Bosk belongs to.
Okay.
And Bosk, of course, in the movies is this frightening looking lizard guy, and the action figure just looks so wide-eyed and mild-mannered. And so I created a character called Slisk, who is the tamest Trandoshan ever. He actually is a great cook, and that's in the series. And again, he's more or less based on that the play that I got out of that character, or that action figure back at the time, because I made that character a good guy because he just looked too mild mannered. I couldn't see him being violent.
And
I was also I was losing the guns everywhere. I'll be finding the guns forever.
Yeah.
That's a good lead in for me to ask just a total geek question. Who are the Stormtroopers at this point?
Well, at this point, they're people that have been drafted, and some people who have joined up. It's very few clones, if any, at this point. By the point of Star Wars, but Star Wars has a wink, or at least one of those pegs on which you can hang the notion of clones on when she says, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?" That implies that it is possible to be too short to be a stormtrooper, and that either they're clones or there's regulations or something like that. But that's so. Yeah, you've got a lot of people that are draftees, I would imagine.
It's weird, like when the prequels came out, it did just kind of bug me. It's like, it's just it's a droid army, a bunch of clones. That's not interesting. And now I'm like, oh wait, that's dystopian, fantastic. I guess you get older, you're more into the horrible ideas in your sci-fi. I don't know. I mean, horrible is in like dystopish. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why do you have the droid armies? In part, it's because you've got Lucas wanting to target the prequels more towards a younger generation and not have a huge body count. And so, it's there's no moral quandaries about blowing these droids up. Although, later on, as you get more sophisticated with reading Star Wars, you realize that the droids do have feelings and everything else. So maybe you shouldn't be blowing them all up.
Yeah, well, 2 points.
But yeah, yes.
I've always assumed the reason he went droids is because all the heroes had lightsabers in those films, and he didn't want them hacking up a bunch of human characters.
Well, and that's part of it. You got to keep your rating.
But me and Matt have always been really fascinated by the sort of the droid question in Star Wars, because like even here in this film, there's the scene, right? We don't serve their kind.
Yeah.
There's this whole undercurrent of like the droids are treated like property, but they are alive. And one of me and Matt's theories is every Star Wars character, you can tell if they're good or not by how they treat droids.
That's not bad.
Which they make a point of actually pointing out in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, I mean, and or they either disdain or ignore them.
Yeah.
Han ignores 3PO until he can't. Lando ignores 3PO. So it's but it's not outright hostility. Trouble with your droid. That's about it. I mean, it's
Let's face it, if 3PO is in the room, you might be game to ignore him, whereas some other droids you might be a little more as long as you're not like kicking C3PO or something, he'll dissemble himself on his own before long anyway. So
and also R2, by being a hero, and R2 is the hero of Empire Strikes Back in the sense that he helped save the Millennium Falcon. That kind of rings true with this. I think it's a very Lucas notion in all the films that the smallest among us are going to be decisive.
Right.
And that's really my defense of the Ewoks has always been that the Ewoks show that the most even the smallest among us, judge me by my size, do you? And Yoda gives that to us as well. It's not the giant space station that ultimately wins. It's not the biggest army that wins. It's heart. It's who is it that's defending their home territory?
I had Ewoks instead of teddy bears as a kid, so I'm perfectly fine to be on their wagon.
I've just realized you made a point there which I've never heard anyone make before. But yeah, everyone who complains about Ewoks loves Yoda.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and if you understand some of the behind the scenes stuff, it all makes sense. Anyway, we wanted to do Wookiees, we couldn't afford it. And the Wookiee thing is even sort of set up because we know about the one thing we do know from the holiday special is we know Kashyyyk, and we know that the Wookiees are downtrodden enslaved species. So this is it's something that where they could have I think we get that moment in this is not a new idea, but we get that in Revenge of the Sith finally, what that would have looked like.
But yeah, an actual Wookiee Return of the Jedi would have been cool. But I got a lot of time for Ewoks.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let's put let's get the geek magnoscope out. Magnoscope, am I saying that right? Microscope out. Magnoscope sounds cool too. What is, what is your biggest geek in the original Star Wars? What moment is the one that really grabs you?
For me, it's absolutely the trench run at the end. That whole action sequence is so good, and just the way everything's right to the last second, and you're cutting back and forth. You got the Death Stars now in range. You got Leia and the General like sharing a look of worry. You've got Luke's in there, and then Vader's about to shoot him, but then Han Solo shoots him, and it's absolutely pitch perfect. I don't know how true it is. There's always the apocryphal story that it was absolutely saved in the edit, and sort of the consensus seems to go back and forth on how true that is. Whether no, George Lucas pretty much had it there and she just tidied it up, or no, his wife basically saved the film. It was trash before that point, but it's a masterclass in editing, and it's so exciting. And any Star Wars video game, I'm straight to right, I want to play the Death Star level. I want to fly down that trench and fire them photon torpedoes.
But watching that despecialized one last night, I did I can tell, in the late 90s where they had, the effects are good in the late 90s. People did good work. And the editing's about the same, but there's some there's a flow to it a little more that I was feeling watching the other version. So as Luke knows, when I'm in a rush, I'll even speed up my movie sometimes. And I totally forgot to speed up Star Wars, which I was going to do because I watched it last month. But yeah, I just, sat down, watched the whole thing at proper speed because he probably should. So I did. John, what's your source, source of your original Star Wars geek in this one? What gets you?
I'll observe on the trench run, so I don't reuse it, but I will observe on that. One of the fun things that's on the internet is somebody took a tape recorder with them into a screening in 77, and you can actually and what they've got is they've got the film, and they've got the last 5 minutes synced up with it, so you can hear the audience reaction, and that took me back because I remember hearing that the first time, or that sounded like what I heard. And of course, you also hear the squeak, squeak, squeak of the wheels, the motor of the tape deck at the time as well. But yeah, I remember that, and it brings to mind later in when I went to see Return of the Jedi, first day. First screening, front row center, not a good place to see a movie, but we were stupid and young. And when Darth Vader's looking from left to right between the Emperor and Luke, the entire audience behind us stood up and was cheering him on to make his decision. And I had never seen that, and will never see that again in a theater. So that was of all the Star Wars movies, that was the wildest geek moment. I'll say probably the moment that it first sucked me in. Again, I couldn't get in to see the movie, but what they would do is our local TV station had a sneak previews kind of a thing that would run. It was a 5-minute thing where it would be trailers for movies that would run before the evening news on Friday night. And so they would usually pick, 1 or 2 trailers. They ran the same Star Wars clip every single week for 6 months. And what it was the escape from the Death Star. So it's don't get cocky, the great kid, that whole sequence with the TIE fighters. And I'm seeing this with absolutely no context. I just see TIE fighters and explosions and robots, falling around, and what am I used to seeing? It ain't this. So yeah, that's probably the first thing that really sold me on it.
What's yours, Matt?
As a kid, and yes, I guess the trench run's definitive, but the game, I forget the name of the game in the Millennium Falcon with the
Hollow Chess.
Thank you, with the Harryhausen things on it. Yeah, that just tickled my fancy when I was a young kid. And when we were doing our Zoom lessons a few years ago, I know a few times I made that little circular couch my background. So I honestly, I guess in general, I want to go hang out in that table. Yeah.
Well, if you pay the folks at Disney a certain amount of money, you can do that now.
No, I'll just assume it's inside this thing I bought with Luke on Monday. It's
There
in
you go.
there. It's in there somewhere. So yeah, but that was the thing where I was like, hey, I want to be on the ship, and I want to, at Tatooine. I mean, it's too hot, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out there.
I've got my bucket of sand from Tatooine in the UK. An ex-girlfriend went on a vacation to where it was filmed and just brought me back some sand from Tatooine.
I'd like to be in City of the Clouds, except for the whole vertigo thing. As long as I never had to look out the window, I'd be okay.
See, you need to despecialize for that too, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was a touch I did enjoy when they actually show you what's outside.
I think, yeah,
Yeah.
of the 3 special edition ones, I like Empire the most because all the decisions work really well.
Yeah. And there weren't many.
Yeah, they don't add any big CG lizards at any point. So
Yeah.
And with Return, I'll never forgive them for the Nub Nub song. So that regularly gets stuck in my head. And I haven't even heard it for 20 years now. So it's still stuck
it's
in my
going to be
head.
in my head now. So thanks for that, Matt.
You're welcome. Earworm. I wonder if we can, instead of talking about like, yeah, obviously Star Wars holds up. That's a stupid conversation, but a fair amount of that is the cultural impact, of course. I wonder if it's possible for us to place this movie in 1988 and then say, so it came out in 88, it was relatively successful, but maybe it didn't start like a whole cultural. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it affects so many movies that follow.
Yeah, I know it's kind of a
mean-
hard experiment to do. It's kind of like
If the
Well-
film hadn't come out in 77, then by the time you get to 88, it would have been a different landscape entirely.
yeah.
I mean, you don't get Disney doing the black hole. You don't get the Paramount with Star Trek, the motion picture, putting as much emphasis on trying to make this a big blockbuster as you might have gotten otherwise. Buck Rogers, Battlestar Galactica, all of those things that come along afterwards. Battle Beyond the Stars. You get Star Wars level, or you get Star Wars things. On television, you can see the emphasis. Mork and Mindy is basically there to because Gary Marshall's kids love Star Wars and they wanted to see a space character. You've got all of these things going on, and that's to say nothing of the technological stuff that Star Wars created. I mean, once Industrial Light and Magic gets in there and starts changing the looks of things. Remember what one of the problems with the movies that came out after Star Wars. One of the reasons they didn't do as well is they look cheesier. They were having to try and reinvent the wheel. And the one thing that didn't look cheesy, and this is something I have a small connection to as well. I wrote the 40th anniversary graphic novel for Battlestar Galactica, and it doesn't look as cheesy in some regards because you've got John Dykstra there, and you've got all of Universal's money they put into making the models and everything. And even though we did see the same special effects shots over and over and over again, or flop the other direction and then over and over and over again, even so, you can kind of say, well, yeah, that more or less is a direct descendant from Star Wars in the sense that they some of the things they learned to use or learned to do affected how they did them over here. And of course you ended up getting Star Wars and got Lucasfilm sued Universal over Galactica, I believe, or maybe they sued Larson. It didn't go anywhere. Apparently you can have two different series with zap guns, and it's okay.
Yeah, as soon as that question came out of my mouth, it's what's the snake that eats its own tail?
Ouroboros.
Yeah, there's a bit of that kind of a question, wasn't it? Chicken or the egg, that you can't really take this out of its context at all, which I'm just like, does it hold up is a question that doesn't seem worth asking, but I guess it's just
these films came out again in 97, as you said, and they did well. They did well in the winter, when there wasn't a lot else on, but they did well. So And also everybody was thinking there were going to be Easter eggs for the prequels in there. And, there's really, it's too soon for that. But, other than, we get our first look at Coruscant at the end. There you go.
Before we finish up today, John, you want to? We won't get too deep into Kenobi because you said what capacity were you working on the show?
Well, no, I didn't work on the show. I wrote the novel Star Wars Kenobi. Yeah,
right.
And basically, all during the last 8-9 years, anytime there's been any mention of Ewan McGregor wanting to do a Kenobi movie or whatever, my social media has exploded. And so the last 2 years have been what do you want to see in the show, and then the last 6 weeks have been what do you think, and it's like and what I've said is I enjoyed it. I anything with anything with more Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan is good. That's what I want to see, and what I am saying is happy to say is that the novel, which just came out and was re-released with this lovely new cover. This is actually the Italian version, but it's available in other languages. The novel coexists with the new series very well. And in fact, one of the major plot decisions that I made in that novel, which I started writing as a story in 2006, and it didn't come out until 2013. But one of the major decisions that I made in terms of whether Obi-Wan was able to talk to Qui-Gon yet, that is consistent with what we see in the series, and it aligns with it. And it was gratifying to find out, from interviews that both Deborah Chow and Ewan McGregor read the book.
Nice.
And
that's got to be a good feeling. Yeah.
I was going to tell you because I finished watching the show last week and then started reading your book, and now I completely got mixed up what's in what. It's all merged together. So,
well, yeah. They said obviously it couldn't be the same story, and it couldn't be because it's 10 years later. My story is an arrival story. I wrote a Western. I wrote Obi-Wan is the mysterious stranger who wanders into town. He has just dropped the baby off at the very beginning of the story. And the only tweak to headcanon which is necessary is that he doesn't stay in the house that he's in the novel. He must go back somewhere else.
It needs renovating for a couple of weeks, and that's when the show takes place. So,
well, even the events of the even the events of the novel, when you finish reading, the events of the novel could be enough to make him move. So, right. And it's 10 years, so anything could have happened. And in fact, we established at the beginning of the novel that wasn't even the first place he went to. The very first place he went to was someplace really, really close to watch over the Lars estate. The Lars compound, the Lars farm, the Lars ranch. And it's really, he decides he needs to move someplace farther away. Well, for the TV show, he moves back.
There we go.
So,
no, and I
so
definitely,
I like that.
I think Luke and I were discussing how Ewan McGregor's aged too well, because he's not that much younger than Alec Guinness when he did the movie, right? But so what I appreciate in your book was, he forgot to wear his hood, so the two sons of Tatooine, really.
Well, yeah, that was my way of explaining it, and I also try to explain why he gets away with being Kenobi here. I try to explain where the Ben name came from and all that kind of stuff. So my job isn't to explain. What I do is I imply. I imply that these things might have happened and let people figure it out. There's things I do have to figure out. I had to, and one of the fun things about the book is they let me figure it out. Why water is something that they have to farm for on this planet, because water, anybody who has got even a little bit of science knows, is pretty darn easy to create. if you've got their kind of technology.
Mm.
And so I decided, well, it's got to be a special kind of water. So it's water like wine. It's wonderful. So, but yeah, that book though has just lived such a long life. It's in just multiple printings, many countries, several languages right now. I'm delighted that people are still reading it.
I'm a little curious. Writing a book like that, I feel like one of the big challenges would be like, I can't just write Dune, which it's a good.
Well, I never finished Dune, so that made it easy for me. But yeah, no. Well, I knew what I was ripping off. I at the very beginning, I pitched it. It was originally pitched as a graphic novel, and I pitched it to my editor at Dark Horse Comics as the Ben Kenobi Western. And basically, I want to do the movie Shane with Ben Kenobi, and Shane is the gunslinger who has hung up his holster, and he's going to go to work on a farm, and he wants to leave his world behind, but the bad guys won't let him. Mm. And this book is told through the viewpoint of all the other people on the planet that he interacts with, because it's no secret who he is to the reader. The reader knows. Mm. It's more fun having the reader follow along with these other characters, wondering when are they going to figure out, what are they going to figure out, and is it going to get them killed? Mm. And so how is it going to change these people's lives? This is the thing with writing tie-ins is I'm not going to kill any character that they've given me, unless I've been told to kill them, and usually you don't want to do that. Even then. Excuse me, but basically, you can give some character development depending on what the story is and how much time they've given you to have the story take place in. I decided that in this novel, Obi-Wan Kenobi's journey, the change that he has to go through, is he has to get over the initial shock of what's happened and start his life. And he has to stop responding to everything as a Jedi and go undercover. And that's kind of what we get. But he has a bigger influence on the lives of the other people that he meets. But yeah, I mean, I've done tie-in fiction for Star Wars, Star Trek, Halo, Mass Effect, Simpsons, Conan, just a lot of different comics, Battlestar Galactica, and in all this stuff. Our job is to try to expand on the story that you've gotten in the movies and in the TV shows and the cartoons, and be respectful of it and put all the toys back in the toy box when you're done.
Yeah, if I'm going to take you a task on anything with the Kenobi book, it's that listeners of this podcast probably know I think about smell-o-vision a lot, and I've been wondering for the past couple of days just what do the sand people smell like. So
well, I don't know if there are any noses under there, so they may not care.
Oh, they don't care, but if you're around them, right?
No, I think there's some mentions of yeah, I think there's some mentions here and there, but I can't remember. It's 10 years now. So
I know you have some reference to like no one's ever going to eat in that room again because there were sand people in there.
well, and they had died there too. So yeah, you got it. So but yeah, I do try to in these stories, give some kind of arcs to the characters to the extent that I can. And again, depending on the franchise, it's you can do quite a bit. I mean, you mentioned Star Trek. My most recent work has been with the folks that do the streaming TV shows. So I've done 2 Discovery novels. One called The Enterprise War, which was Captain Pike's where Captain Pike and the Enterprise were during the Klingon War. And so I got to have that character for a whole year in that book. I wrote a book called Die Standing, which is Emperor Giorgio from the Mirror Universe, having to give up wanting to recreate her empire in our universe. And she has to learn to live with no longer being the emperor. And then the most recent hardcover I did, Rogue Elements for Picard. That's Captain Rios from the Picard series. This is in the aftermath of him getting thrown out of Starfleet, and it's about him having to learn to try to go on. I've got a lot of these basically damaged men in recovery here, or damaged characters, because of Emperor Georgiou. These people who have lost a lot and are having to bounce back from it. The novel I did after Kenobi is the new A New Dawn. That's the Rebels prequel novel. Again, about it's almost the inverse of the Kenobi novel, because it's about Kanan Jarrus from the Rebel show, and how, Obi-Wan knows what happened in Order 66. Obi-Wan has a mission. Kanan doesn't know, and he has no mission. So he's trying to put his life back together separately. And so, yeah, all these books kind of have some similar themes running through them. Not really so on my newest novel, which is I guess to mention the stuff I got coming up. The next novel out for me is Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, The High Country. And that comes out in February. That's a hardcover novel. Longest novel I've written, one of my favorites. I couldn't let go of writing it. I enjoyed it so much. And again, this is not so much of a traumatic experience that anybody has to get over in this. This is more of a pure adventure. I'm appreciative that I've gotten to work with the folks at Star Trek and the TV series, and then Star Wars. I go back to it every so often. I've done now short stories for the last two what they call From a Certain Point of View books. These are big anthologies. 40th anniversary of Star Wars, 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, and my story for the one for Star Wars, which is still available in hardcover out there and paperback. Is actually a short story sequel to the Kenobi novel. So that's fun. It continues to sort of live on in various different ways.
Yeah, I've been enviously eyeing your Strange New Worlds poster behind you for that new book this entire podcast.
Yeah, that cover came out while I was at the Star Trek equivalent of Star Wars Celebration. That cover came out the night of the event where we announced the book. So if I had it 6 hours earlier, it would have been golden. So I just need them to invent time travel and send it back to me.
Ah, okay. Well, you got it now, so looking good there.
Yeah, no, it's good, and no, I'm tickled with the book, and I think other people like it too.
Nice.
Oh, go ahead, Luke.
I think I was about to do the same thing you're about to do.
Is there a website people should go to, or should we just buy some books?
Okay, so my website is farawaypress.com, where I have behind the scenes notes on almost all of the novels and comics that I've written. So when, for example, you read a novel like Kenobi or one of the graphic novels, you'll be able to go to that, and it's like the director's commentary. It's chapter by chapter trivia. It's links to other things. The Kenobi one in particular has links to maps of everything that happens in the novel that are official Lucasfilm maps, and also there's a link to a piece on Entertainment Weekly where James Arnold Taylor, the guy that does the voice of Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars cartoons, does a reading of one of the meditations from the book in Obi-Wan's voice. So that's one of the kind of things that's there. Also, there's pre-order links for things like the Strange New Worlds book. Then we've got on Twitter, JJM Faraway, and on Facebook and Instagram, John Jackson Miller.
And just for anyone that the way that I ended up inviting you, it's just sometimes look at the Facebook suggest these friends, because I'm like, hey, he's there. We have 5 mutual friends. I should send an invite. So sometimes it's worth glancing at that, even though it does look kind of spammy when you're trying to look at your feed or whatever. Luke, are you scrolling? Are you scrolling yet?
I still try not to as much as I can.
Okay. So if you're not a scroller, then that makes sense anyway. But I guess tell them what we're at.
Yep. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find it on Twitter at MLSFS Pod. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you like and subscribe, rate and review, blah, blah, blah. And if you want to help support the podcast, keep it online. You can go to patreon.com/podcastiopodcastius. And there you'll find links to all the other podcasts that me and Matt create.
Okay. May the force be with you then.
Yeah, there's only one way we can end our Star Wars episode, and that's live long and prosper.
Right.
May the force live long and prosper.
There we go.
Now we're working out. Okay. I should have put on my gold shirt for this too. Gold shirt and vest, man. That's what I should have done. Oops. Next time.
Perfect.
There's a sequel.
Click on Jedi.
Okay, that's my cutting point, and I'm saying that because I found it's actually useful when I say that.
Okay.
Like, where was I going to cut exactly? I don't remember. But yeah. Thanks for your time. It's always fun
Very
to
good.
go under the hood to that degree, and so.
Are you guys both in Japan?
Yep. Yeah, we work at the same day job. I'll be seeing Matt in a few hours.
Yeah.
What brings you there?
Luke, you first.
Why
I
are
forgot
you
my
in
reason.
Japan?
So I was waiting for Matt to answer because his is basically just he sort of found his way here by accident. No, I grew up as a big like Nintendo geek, and then a few years ago, I was like, my dad's like, "What are you gonna do with your life?" I said, "Oh, maybe I'll study Japanese." He's like, "Why don't you move to Japan?" I was like, "Yeah, why don't I move to Japan?" So I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you still haven't studied Japanese.
This is discussion.
No, my nephew is he's engaged to a girl from Japan, and
Okay.
they haven't seen each other for like 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do. but yeah, he's a business degree guy who's got enough Japanese to work over there. But apparently, whatever plans they had for her to come over here or him to go over there, they're kind of on hold. So hopefully they'll get it all worked out.
Yeah, they just started letting like tourists come back, but like completely curated like North Korean tour group style things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're like kind of like, you must be over here. It's really weird. So and then for Luke and I, we're just do whatever we want. So that's also weird.
Well, they've had virtual date night for about 2 weeks, rather for once a week for about 2 years now. And so, but I'm like, yeah, isn't that like 12 hours apart for you guys? I mean, so I guess it must be. So it's not.
Well, that's how we work it out now. It's always I roll out of bed and do these podcasts. So
yeah,
and
no, that works. Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good
thanks.
evening. Just to let you know, I'll send you a message at the time, but I think this one's about July 19th-ish when I'm gonna release it. So
Cool.
I will send
I
you a
look forward
link
to it.
then.
Thanks.
Okay, have a good one.